You cannot fall in love with a deal. People might do dumb things when they're in love, young love or whatever it might be. You have to make sure you can keep the emotions out of that, or it will cause you problems. You can talk yourself into deals. You can convince yourself that it's going to be fine. You've got to stay neutral and look at the facts as best that you can. Sure, there's going to be your gut knowledge. There's people who've been doing this business for a long time, and they just have a sense. They know, hey, this area works. It's path of growth. There's always going to be that gut part to a deal. But if you fall in love with it, you are going to make a bad decision.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
I want you to imagine for a moment that you're humming along, you're doing 50 homes a year, and now you pop the clutch and you take that production up to 100. And then suddenly, all those systems that you had in place start failing you. The people that helped you scale originally, for whatever reason, can't help you scale anymore. Everything that you relied on in the past, it's like it never worked. That, by definition, my friend, is hitting the wall. And in this week's conversation, I get to sit down with Randy Mickle, and he is the regional president of Drees Homes. And he oversees multiple high-growth areas in the Southeast, Nashville to Raleigh to Northern Virginia. And what a career this guy has had. Like, he's been in the business now for over 2 decades in some of the largest home building organizations in the USA. And starting in sales, he worked his way up to being part of the executive leadership team. And he's seen what separates builders who scale from those who stall. I love that expression, those who scale to those who stall. And in this conversation, we touched on so many things, but here are a few of the highlights. Why operational excellence, not opportunity, is what actually drives growth. The hidden breaking point every builder hits when going from a doer to a leader. How systems, not hustle, determine whether you can double your business. And why falling in love with a deal is one of the fastest ways to lose money. And so much more. Now, speaking of lose, we're trying to gain market share. We're trying to gain an audience. And to do that, I need your help. With the simple click of a mouse, please subscribe, like, and share to our podcast. That simple little action helps take this podcast into the algorithms so many more builders can see what we're doing here. As I state always, there's no advertising here, just great content. So I rely on your benevolence. With the click of a mouse, please hit subscribe, like, and share. Without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Randy. I know you're going to enjoy it. Well, in the old days, we'd go like this. I think that's how old school TV used to be.
Or the little, like,
So
do they still use the action things in the movies anymore? I wonder.
well, do you know why they actually, do you know the history behind that thing?
I don't.
Why
No.
they snapped it? So in the old days, and I used to do it too, they would record the video on one track, like the actual thing that you see, and the audio was recorded on a completely different track. And when they would hit that thing, that marker, it would create a sound wave, and that's what they would use to line up the built-in audio to the audio that's being recorded. So it gave them a point of reference. And then as we went more digital, it became easier, but that's what they used to do to line up the audio to the video.
There you go. Well, if nothing else, Michael, I learned something today, so chalk it up as a success.
My job here is done, Randy. And speaking of Randy Merkel, welcome to today's call. Really appreciate you being here. I don't even know where to start because if I were to put this into a narrative, you kind of remind me of graduation day at high school. So the kids graduate, some go to college, some go to university. They go to university, they get a big job. Then they come back to their high school to visit and share their adventures. And I kind of feel that's where you are right now because you've worked for some of the biggest builders out there. Mm-hmm. And now you're bringing your experiences, if you will, back to our little community college here, our puppet show of a podcast. And I'm hoping that we can glean from your experiences how our builders can scale and what they should be looking for. Because in your world, you're dealing with homes built productions, I guess, in the thousands mm-hmm. versus in the 10s, 50s, or 100s. So I think this is going to be an interesting call. What I'm hoping we can do is frame it in the context of what can a builder that's on the verge of scaling take away from the conversation you and I have today.
Sounds great. I'm excited to do it.
Okay, so how about you share with us, young man, a bit of your backstory? and where you are today and what's happening in Randy's world.
I guess I'll maybe start at the current spot and then rewind from there. So I'm currently with Drees Homes, and in my role, I am what they call a regional president. So I oversee our Southeast region, which is really four markets, which is Nashville, Tennessee, our Northern Virginia or DC market, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida. And I kind of got here along the ways of a kid who started in selling retail sporting goods through high school and through college from Durham, North Carolina, and through moving to Indianapolis, Indiana after college. Actually found my way to Ryland Homes. And Ryland Homes hired me as a sales trainee in 2004 when things were just super hot before the financial crisis and that time that we all have scars from. And started in the sales center, the model homes as a sales trainee, worked my way through being on-site sales to sales management to a VP of marketing and sales, and then worked my way into a division president role and find myself here where I started at the beginning of the little talk was with Drees Homes. So it's been quite a ride and a lot of learning experiences along the way. 21 years total, I guess.
Yeah, you've more or less touched upon everything along the way. Like you started off in sales, which would also mean marketing. Was the end goal, like, did you see yourself being in executive leadership, or at that point you just kind of went with the flow?
Yeah, I always wanted to be the boss. So I think I've always been trying to just put myself in a better position. I grew up in a blue collar family. My dad worked for the airlines. My mom was a teacher's aide, and nothing was given to me. And I knew if I wanted more for myself, more for my family, yeah, I'm just going to have to work hard for it. And I had some great role models along the way who were just hard workers and put themselves in positions to be more successful. And I just tried to emulate that. And I wasn't shy about it coming in saying, hey, I want to be this. I want to be this next role. And I would encourage anybody out there that's in a builder environment to do the same thing. If you want to take the next step, you got to raise your hand and say, I want to take the next step. Well, it certainly won't find you if you don't do that.
So let's talk about that next step for the builder right now. Let's say they're doing 10 homes they want to scale.
Mhm.
And I guess that magic number, if you will be a different number for every builder, but they want to increase. Is there, in your world, and based on your experiences, is there, I want to say like an indicator, like when a lobster expands as it gets bigger, it sheds its shell, right? And at one point it's vulnerable, but it has to go through that pain of shedding the shell before it develops the bigger one. Is there a pain point that a builder experiences that is almost like the bell ringing in the background that it's time to expand?
I don't know if I would describe it as a pain point, which would say it's time to expand as much as it's probably the success. I would say whether you've created a product or a process or have just phenomenal people who are putting you in a situation where you say, I can do more, build more homes in our case next year than I built this year. That's usually what's getting people to expand. So the pain comes during the expansion. So maybe like you use the lobster analogy, you start to go from 10 to 20 homes or 100 to 200 or 200 to 400, whatever it is. You're going to experience that pain as you double it up. But it's probably based on that you're doing something right, that you have that ability to expand.
So, based on where you are now with the big boys, are there systems that you guys are using that would help the builder at that scale point? Like, obviously, they have to have infrastructure in place. They must have systems in place. Are there like a Randy top 3 or top 5 of things that every builder should have when they're getting ready to scale?
Well, I guess I'd probably use first thing that comes to mind when you say that is like a job board. So a lot of builders will have like whiteboards or magnet boards, or maybe it's even an Excel sheet if they were really advanced, where they're tracking jobs. And, that's one of the things that I would look at and say, all right, if a builder's got a whiteboard and they're putting tabs or magnets, it's a pretty common thing in production home building for every job. And, there's what, 20 working days in a month that you've got to start homes, maybe a little bit more. That's something you look at and go, well, how can I build 500 homes a year and still use this slotting board as something that's going to work for me with scale? So I think any builder's got to look at it and say, if I woke up tomorrow and I was building twice as many homes as I am today, would the way I'm doing this work? And that's a hard thing because you got to look at yourself and go, I got to change something. And people love change. But that's something that I've looked at and said, hey, we can't build 400 homes tomorrow on this system that we're doing 200 on today because we won't be able to scale it.
There's a system issue, but there's also a people issue. Being able to, as a smaller builder, you have your mark on everything. And I think the trap that many builders fall into is they do everything. They're the accountant, the bookkeeper, the marketer, the salesperson, and everything. And to reach that scale point, the tipping point, if you will, they need to be able to let go of ego and let go and delegate. So that could be hiring their first project manager. Is that kind of what you've seen in terms of the growth that when you've been involved with different companies?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when when I heard you say delegate. The experience I've seen in that is, my lens comes from certainly big builders environment. So I can't sit here and say I really understand, the sole proprietor 10 home a year builders world. I think they're doing something a little different than what we're doing. They're entrepreneurial, they're working for themselves. We're working within a bigger environment. But I think what you said, that delegation part is really key, because what I've found is your key people that you have on your team who are enabling you to grow because they're doing such a phenomenal job. They're selling the heck out of homes. They're building high quality homes at good speed, or they're the best land acquisition person, or the best purchasing person in town who's got the right trade connections and negotiating right. When you move them from a doer to a delegator, their world turns upside down. And that is really difficult. So I assume that would be very relatable to someone who's, hey, I'm the only person here. I'm doing everything. And now I'm going to hire that first person to then delegate to let go. And then you've got to become a trainer. You've got to become a manager, a leader. Some people aren't leaders. And that's a very, very difficult part of growing, is transitioning those doers to managers.
Is there anything particular that Drees would look for? So, for example, if you were looking for a production manager, is there something that we can glean from that you guys look for? Because everybody looks great on paper. But the reality is when they show up and they're actually implementing whatever style that they have, some don't have any. Like I said, they look good on paper. Are there any shortcuts or things that you would advise that a builder should be looking for?
Hmm. I hope there's certainly not any shortcuts. I think the biggest thing is, can you find that person who has a great personality, right? I mean, we're in a customer business. So even if it's a builder that you don't think is going to be frontline customer, they're not a salesperson. They're going to be interacting with customers. And if they're not interacting with the buyer, they're interacting with our customer, i.e. that trade partner that's on site. And so you've got to be in an interview with somebody and say, this person's relatable. There's someone that people want to talk to. There's someone who can build trust. And I think if you can blend somebody who has that personality fit with someone who you can determine has good work ethic, which would mean they're gonna learn, they're gonna be trainable, they're gonna work hard. If you have a system then to train, that person's gonna be successful. So it really comes down to just that interview process, making sure you pick the right people, and then having a process to train them once you have them on board.
I think you hit it there at the last three, that they've got to be excited, trainable, malleable, and excited about the job. One of the builders that I interviewed, they do about 800 a year. But before he got to that point, he hired his first project manager, as a result of a heart attack.
Mm.
And then he had to realize, hey, this is not going to end well if I keep on the same trajectory that I'm on now. So I've got to hire somebody. And he went through the typical, looking at all the resumes. Everybody looked great. But what he dialed in was, through experience, that he needed somebody, wasn't so much about what they looked like on paper, but were they excited about being there? Are they willing to listen? Because he wanted somebody that would adapt to his culture and what they were doing and not the other way around. So excited, willing to learn, adaptable, if you will. That was his criteria. And that's the winning formula for him. Would you think that is something that you guys would be using as well or akin to that?
Oh, for sure. And we're a big organization. And so we're doing personality testing and we're doing skills-based testing and stuff like that. So we've got some data behind it to work with these people that we're, considering, and they're considering to join us. But it's a blend for me. Even when I meet people, it's still, can I, even using some of this data, can I match up what this person's personality profile says they are with the person that I'm sitting across from and say, are they the same person? It's all part of just trying to make sure you make the right hire, because the wrong hire is so costly. It really,
Yeah.
really is.
You mentioned, you've got tests that you do, you've got a whole HR department behind you. Would you say there are certain things that a big builder does better than a smaller builder? What would be a few of those things?
I mean, the number one's going to be systems, because it makes it easier for us to grow in a certain city, to expand to a new city, to acquire another builder, because we have good back office systems, whether that be scheduling systems or purchasing systems, accounting systems, sales system, whatever those are. They've been dialed in. They're well supported. They're vetted out. They're going to work really well, and that's an advantage that we're going to have. And what's interesting about that, I think, with how much technology is moving to get us down the AI rabbit hole, which is just in front of us all the time, I think that's going to become a lot easier for builders of smaller size to leverage this technology without having to have seven-figure contracts with outside companies to develop some of these things. So it'll be interesting to see how this AI technology moves and allows smaller builders to have the systems in place that maybe they didn't have in the past.
I jokingly say, thank goodness for the rich people, because they're the ones that can buy stuff first. So when flat panel TV screens came out, I remember coming down a production line, I think it was like 1 in 50 would actually work. And they were going for thousands of dollars. But once they've dialed in and got it right, proof of concept, then the prices came down. And I'm looking at, as you're describing systems and what you guys are doing at Drees, once upon a time, it would be your own proprietary software. You had to hire somebody to create all this stuff. And now it's at that point where a builder can almost take something off the shelf and apply it into their business. Now, the one thing that you said about systems there that really just kind of caught my eye, you said when you acquire other companies. So I take it then when you're looking at a builder that you're going to acquire, is there a certain, I don't want to say mindset, what is it that you're looking for that will make them a fit? That you guys are actually going to open up a checkbook and say, hey, we want you on our team?
Wow, that's a big question. The fit part of that is probably more cultural, to make sure that the group of people that are coming on are going to fit within what we do and be additive to the business and not be a distraction from the business. I think any builder is going to look at that a little bit differently. The larger, where I came from in the past, might just be assets. Builder B has land. We want that land and we want the assets. A builder like Drees certainly interested in assets, but we may be looking at, gaining some institutional knowledge base in a local market or whatever and bringing that leadership on. So I think it's going to be different depending on the lens or the size of the builder that's acquiring that other builder. But you really can't forget that assets are going to be the key. What kind of land assets or pipeline does that builder have? That's going to be additive to the business.
The reason I asked that question, Randy, is I'm trying to think in terms of the back end of that company that you guys are looking at. What is it, thinking 5 years, 10 years down the road, that they should be doing now to make them the type of company, I don't want to say is acquirable, but they're like that good looking blonde at the bar. They're actually getting somebody's attention. So for example, there's a company in California that we interviewed. They're holding on to 5,000 lots right now. And then when COVID hit, they had an epiphany. They thought, hey, we've been doing all this development. We sell it to the big builders. Maybe we should be building our own homes.
Yeah.
And at that point, they did a pivot. So they're still doing the land acquisition and taking it to title, but now they're building on their own land as well. But there was that moment when they realized, hey, this is what we need to do. Now, I'll guarantee you 5 years from now, someone like a Drees is going to come in with a big checkbook and buy them out, lock, stock, and barrel. So what is it that builders should be looking at today to prepare themselves potentially in the future for maybe a builder to approach them and buy them out?
I was given that advice. The best thing I would say first would be the assets. That's going to be the number one thing that any builder is going to be looking at. And I go back, if you're trying to then grow, you're going to acquire land. I would say you're looking at that to be a very operationally efficient home builder, so you can make any of this land pencil, right? So you're going to need to have a low cost of construction, good cycle times, good sales pace, because that's all going to lead to what that land residual is going to be and how much you can pay for land. So you can win and have land and not just go ahead and lose it on the front end to another builder. I have seen some builders who are trying to grow, to set themselves up maybe for that acquisition, go further out, buy unentitled land. They're taking a lot more risk than in that case and saying, I can buy unentitled land, get it entitled, build this pipeline, and then I'm going to have an exit. It's a big gamble, I would say. But if you're just building yourself up on land deals which are going to make sense, you're going to have to be very operationally sound. If not, another builder who is more operationally sound than you has lower costs, better cycle times, better sales pace, better sales revenue, and they're going to pay more for the land, and you're going to lose anyway. So you got to be operationally efficient, and then you can acquire land, and then you can grow, and then you could be acquired.
I guess the question is, in terms of that efficiency, I see two parts: efficiency and risk tolerance. How much are they prepared to risk? So again, I'm trying to put you in a corner here. I don't mean to, by saying, is there a magic formula or something? Is the focus on acquiring land, holding it and building on it? Is it looking at partnerships where you're not tied up with capital that goes into the land? Is there, I guess it's all things to different builders, but would there be a Randy way of moving forward? So again, I'm the smaller builder. I want to scale. What do I need to do? What are those steps?
I'm going to go back to I say this a lot in our organization, operational excellence equals growth. And you do have to start from the beginning of what kind of cost structure do I have in place? What's this going to cost me to build these homes? How quick can I move through them? How fast can I sell them? What kind of revenue can I drive out of my product? Because that's going to determine how much you can pay for that. I call our raw material land. We need land to produce more homes. So we need to mine land. And what we can pay for that land is effectively the result of a math problem of what our margins are going to be, what our returns are going to be, because we've got, investors to make happy or a bank to make happy, one or the other, right? It all, to me, still comes back to just being operationally excellent, because that's going to make the math problem work so you can grow. If you can't make that math problem work, either you're going to decide your money is better used somewhere else if you're putting your own money into the deal, or your partners are going to say, my money's better used somewhere else than investing in your building company, Michael.
Yeah. I'm seeing this phrase you're using, operational excellence. It's like this big piñata. And I'm trying to break it open so the bits and pieces fall out so builders can pick up at it. And I just don't know how to get a grasp on it, Randy. Again, I'm trying to, how do we baby stem that? We talked about systems. We talked a little bit about risk, leadership, excellence. What am I missing here?
Well, I think when I draw a lot on my experience, I've spent 20 years of my career or 21, I guess, 2 decades or more with larger publicly traded home builders. And, that they all, I guess, 3 iterations of that. So it was Ryland Homes, then it was Cal-Atlantic Homes, which was a merger of Ryland and Standard Pacific, and then Lennar acquired Cal-Atlantic. And so just got bigger.
I think in pictures. I see the picture, then I've got to put the words around it and translate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at you and I think back to when I got my first car. in high school, and it was like a beater, and it was held together by spit, duct tape, and prayer, right? And I don't think you had to go through that. And I'm mirroring this to construction, the fact that you're with a big builder. Your first car was probably a Cadillac. So you didn't have to go through the experience of holding it together because you were in something big, bright, and shiny right away. So I'm pairing that to the fact that you never had to go through the pain that small builders are going through right now because you started off with the bigger guys. Is that fair to say? And if not, smack me in the head. I won't cry much.
Yeah, I think the I don't know if it's unique, but it's the world I know. With home building, it's such a decentralized corporate structure, even in the big builder universe, and every division takes on its own identity. I relate it sometimes to a franchise store. You can go into one, I'll just say McDonald's, and have a different experience than you might have at another one based on maybe how well managed that franchisee takes care of his place. And maybe McDonald's is a bad example, but I guess you know what I mean. So every division is in a different place. They might be in a different place of their life cycle. Could be a startup, could be a division that's been existing in a city for 50 years. And so whether you're, somebody listening to this is they're running their own sole proprietor shop, or they are working within a division of a big builder, they might be at that point in the curve where they're saying, I'm just trying to find my way. I'm trying to set up our identity within this market. I'm trying to figure out what we do well. And I think at a big builder, I'll draw on my experience when I moved from Indianapolis to Nashville and took over the Nashville division for Lennar. That was a division that was tiny in the scale of Lennar, and I would say had not yet found its way. But it was pretty easy for me to open up the Lennar playbook and say, there's an instruction manual. And, for Lennar, it was step one, EI program. Everything's included. That's Lennar's thing. And it was like, okay, are we doing that? No. All right. Box one, we're going to do that. So within a bigger builder environment, you have the playbook, so to speak, where you can say, what's worked and how can we recreate that, i.e. maybe a franchise type model. And I think you've had guests on your show say this, it's very common in our home building business. There's not a lot of secrets. It's just who's willing to do it. And so you can walk into any competitor home tomorrow and look at everything they're doing. Can you replicate it? Maybe, probably. Do you want to, or will you put in the work to do it? That's the question. And the same thing occurs within big public builders. You might have local operators who just don't put in the work, and they don't follow the playbook, and they're not as successful as others.
How do we get our hands on the Lennar Coles notes that you're using for success?
Like I said, I don't think there's a lot of secrets. With any builder, you can pretty much know what their playbook is, what they're trying to do. With Drees, we are a niche where we thread that needle between custom and production, where we do what we call custom plus construct. So we want personalization, customization on that front end, but we draw a line, and then we're going to build this as a production home. And that allows us to do it at speed, at scale, at a better price. But that's our niche. And that's not secret. I think all our competitors know what Drees does and knows what we do well. Do they want to copy it or not? I worked at Lennar. Everything's included. It's simple. It's repeatable. Going to be a low-cost provider. Going to be building it at speed. And everybody knows it. Some people try to copy it. Maybe they don't do it as well as Lennar does. So I think you can find a niche and try to do what you want to do, but it's not too hard to copy, I think, what other builders are doing. It's a pretty simple business.
Are you guys, I don't want to say the attainable or affordable, obtainable, whatever the politically correct word is that the price point that you cater to, the buyer that you cater to? Entry level, or is it move up?
With Drees, no, we are certainly a move up focused builder. We do some product that would be in the first time buyer space. It'd be limited, and it might be on the higher end of the first time. our focus is going to be on design. It's going to be on personalization. We operate design centers, so we're naturally going to be at a higher price point. It looks a little different, like every builder from city to city, on what type of product that we're doing. But yeah, we're going to be more on the move up space than we are in that first time entry level space.
I'm looking at this from a builder's perspective. If they were to sneak around your sales office, again, looking at the coal notes, I'm trying to think of what they could glean to bring back to their company and to implement. So even like from your design, you mentioned something about the ability that you're doing production, but at the same time, you're giving them enough options that they can pick and choose. So it almost feels like it's a custom home for them.
Mhm.
So I'm not buying a box. I am buying something that I've personalized.
Yeah, there's within a design center environment, you're going to start to narrow the scope of what people can choose from. So if you move from custom, where the world is your oyster, whatever you want, we will find it and we will install it. Well, so let's start to narrow that down. Maybe we only offer one brand of cabinets or one brand of appliances, and there's different, there's good, better, best, maybe even better than best type environment that's out there. But we're going to narrow that focus in. That will help us drive economies of scale with pricing and availability. So it helps us with the cost side, but also helps us with the cycle time side of the equation. It helps us with the ability to estimate that home quickly and easily with a consumer, so we can tell them how much their home will cost. Those are all the things that we do to try to make it as easy as possible for the customer, but also allows us to work at a speed that is in that mode of a higher volume production home builder. And that allows us to do things that a smaller builder may not be able to do.
I like that idea, the build to speed part, that you've dialed it in almost to a science, that you know how to do it. You give them enough options, but it's not going to hinder how quickly you can produce that home.
Mhm. Yeah, we're
Excellent.
going to really drive. We know how long it should take us to build a certain home in a certain community, and we're going to build to that and measure it and test it and try it again. And that is part of what, let's say, any operationally sound builder size is going to do.
Is there anything in particular when you're firing up a new community? And I'm going to embarrass myself by saying this. You're probably doing what, a few hundred homes at a time before you stick the shovel into the ground. Like you're looking at a full on community versus a small tract of houses. What would be like an entry level project that you guys would take on versus what would the average be,
Are
if
you
there is
asking
such
as
a
far
thing?
as like how many homes in a community?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean that's going to vary. I would say, I mean, we at Drees might certainly do something that's in the maybe it's 15 to 20 homes at a smaller end. They're probably a higher price point. Um, up to, it could be 100, 200 plus homes in a community. So it's going to, we do a wide variety of size of communities.
The reason I ask that, so I would think that at any given time, you have your production cycle already planned out for the year, which means your capital's allocated, you know what you're going to build. But there must be those opportunities where you're approached by a builder or an opportunity presents itself. And this could be a potential project for us. Is there anything in particular that you would look at? And in helicopters, or when you're piloting a plane, there's that go or no go zone. You get to the point where you're committed or you crash into the water. What is it that you guys look for? Is there such a thing for you, go, no go, and which motivates you to want to fire on a project?
There's going to be some go, no go. And that's, you kind of mentioned a little bit, whether that's how much do we feel like we have reached the limit of exposure we want in a certain market? Or do we have some runway where it is a market that we still want to invest in? So there's maybe going to be that first test of a go, no go. But, for the most part, we are always looking at potential land deals and vetting those out, determining what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. And, you know, we, we we have aspirations still to grow. We have growth goals that we want to obtain. We're a company that's closing in on our 100th year anniversary. And so we set what we call our centennial goals, and we've got some goals as a company we want to get to. So we're always going to be looking at those deals, and good deals. It's almost, you can always find space for good deals. It's those marginal deals where you're wondering, is this one going to work or not? That's when you're probably going to default back to going, my exposure is pretty set in this area, and I don't need to take this marginal deal.
Do you find that as a bigger builder, and if I compare it to the smaller builder, you try to take the emotion out of the equation, and when you look at a deal, it's more about bottom line dollars and cents? Versus for a smaller builder, it could be maybe pride of the development. They get excited about something. Is it more like that for you guys? It's about the bottom line. And where I'm going with this is if you're that focused on a project, unlike a smaller production builder, there are dragons waiting in the weeds that sometimes they don't see because they don't want to see them because they're so enamored by the project.
You cannot fall in love with a deal.
Okay.
You cannot fall in love with a deal. I think it's make some analogy. People might do dumb things when they're in love, young love or whatever it might be. You have to make sure you can keep the emotions out of that, or it will cause you problems. You can talk yourself into deals. You can convince yourself that it's going to be fine. You've got to stay neutral and look at the facts as best that you can. Sure, there's going to be your gut knowledge. There's people who've been doing this business for a long time, and they just have a sense. They know, hey, this area works. It's path of growth. There's always going to be that gut part to a deal. But if you fall in love with it, you are going to make a bad decision.
That said, has there ever been a situation that you guys have been in where you thought this thing is great, and then as you got involved with it, you wish you didn't get out of bed that day?
Oh, for sure. If anybody says they don't, I think they're either really lucky or they're lying. Certainly, because sometimes cycles are just going to catch you. Cycles are going to make us all. They made us all look like geniuses for a few years there in the past, and there's been times where the cycles just make you look stupid too. But yeah, I can just speak from personal experience. I mean, I've been a part of deals that maybe we moved too fast on, we didn't do enough due diligence, and we got caught with some land development costs that nobody expected would happen. And that's for anybody that's in Nashville or been in Nashville. There's a lot of rock, and that can get you really quick in this town. So yeah, there's certainly been that. I don't know that it's because sometimes you just do something wrong, but I think a lot of times you probably can't due diligence something enough, but you never have enough time. There's always somebody on the other side of that negotiating table that wants you to be done faster, or there's another bidder to the project who says, I'm going to do it in 60 days. And you're like, this deal needs it 90 days. And you just have to be steadfast and know that I'm doing what I'm comfortable with. And if you lose out to somebody else, you got to sleep well at night knowing you did what was right for you, your business, or your company. And, just staying fast on your values with that.
Is that one of the advantages of a bigger company? You have a whole division that is dedicated to doing the investigation of a product and make sure that it makes sense, versus on a smaller side, it's more about the emotion. Yeah, I guess, more about the emotion versus the common sense, if you will, or the analytics.
Coming, seeing a few different builders, I don't know that anybody's got great, massive teams behind them doing due diligence. There may be a few more people in some organizations, but they're also doing a lot bigger volume. So I think, just from my experience, I think especially builders are a little bit of land developers in denial. And that land development or entitlement teams seems to be just bare bones, and probably don't have enough bandwidth to handle the amount of volume that comes their way. So I don't know that it's an advantage that somebody has. There's probably some exceptions out there, but if you're a smaller builder and you're just doing one deal, you may have more bandwidth to handle that one deal than the bigger builder who's got two people working on 40.
Is there anything that you would recommend as a backup that a builder should keep in mind, so that they're looking at a deal, if things do go south, that they have like a fallback position so they're not too exposed?
Well, I think that's what's really key in negotiating a good contract. And you've really got to think through what's the risk mitigation aspect of that contract. So the terms, people get hung up on, I think, price or their due diligence period, but sometimes they forget to think about what are the other terms of that contract. So what happens if things go sideways further along the lines? What's that exit or walk away look like? And I don't know that that's always vetted out as well as it should be. And there those come with experience, and I think the people with more scars from bad deals in the past are probably better at that. But they're also ones that are gonna want all kinds of stuff in a deal, and then somebody a little more risk adverse or a little less experienced comes along and says, "Oh, we'll do that," and they get a deal, and then they'll have the scars later to show for it.
Let's talk about when you guys at Drees are making a deal and you're looking to acquire capital for your next venture. Is there a formula that they use? Like, is it banks? Is it personal financing that the company's accrued? Is it partners? And how do you decide which path you're going to take? Or is that all related to what project you're taking on?
Yeah, thankfully with Drees being around for almost 100 years, the family Drees family, it's third generation ownership right now, and longstanding company with a lot of equity in the company and a lot of longstanding banking relationships. So we know what our levels of debt that we want to take on, and it's we allocate that pretty judiciously. And so we know when we look at a deal, does this fit within what we were planning to do? And I think we have great banking relationships that if we want to scale and we want to do more, I'm sure we can work with them to figure that out.
Yeah, I look at it, different builders have different philosophies. Some believe in it's more fun working with other people's money versus others. They've got enough liquidity that they fund their own projects. I'm just wondering if there's that sweet spot in terms of what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at it like we're funding everything, right? Whether it's debt or equity. So we're going to look at those deals, on a one by one basis, and does it deliver the returns that we expect? And we just look for, we benchmark against public builders or anybody else in the space and say, are we delivering competitive returns in our deals? And we're conservative. We're not going to stretch that and try to put ourselves in jeopardy. But we're just, we're trying to hit the same return metrics that we see other builders hit.
Any predictions in terms of where you guys are going to be in the next 5 years in terms of what's happening in the market? Do you see that there's going to be more of a focus on production style types homes, like 3D printed homes? And I'm tying this back to labor since it's so hard to find labor right now to actually do the work. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that for 5 that are retiring, only one's coming into the space.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys are doing now to prepare for what a potential future could be?
At Drees, I can't say that we're out there doing R&D research on alternative building practices. In my former life, I know Lennar was very involved in a lot of technology research and building technology type stuff. I wasn't privy to a lot of that, but I, know that Lennar was doing a ton of those things. At Drees, not really something we're looking heavily at. So it's certainly at the you hit on a big point there, and that's what's the labor force look like in the future. I would say in my own purview right now, I haven't seen a ton of labor constraints. Um, I think certainly we saw that through the last run up in the market that it got really difficult to get supplies, and there was certainly some crunches on labor out there. But I certainly believe that it's going to be something we're going to be fighting with in some number of years in the future, because the appetite for going into the trades by younger people, it just hasn't been there. So we're going to have a shortage of skilled labor for sure.
Is there anything you're doing at a company, like if I were to compare you to a logging company, you know, a good steward of the land is taking down trees, but at the same time, they're replanting them. So focusing on this idea of labor, is there anything that you're doing as a company, and especially with the scale that you have, to entice a new generation of builders to come into the trades?
Yeah, as a side, we were hosted by Weyerhaeuser down to their forestry operation in Louisiana, and it's you bring that up about what they do, the stewards of the land, unbelievable. If you ever
Yeah.
have that opportunity, staring at a forest is kind of a weird thing to do, but unbelievable the forestry management that they have. So, just as a side, you said something that triggered me there that we got to do this year, which was really exciting.
Were you
Um,
actually planting trees?
I'm sorry.
Were you actually planting
No, they didn't
trees?
let us touch anything.
Oh, okay.
But they're certainly being good stewards of everything they do out there to keep us supplied with lumber and people with paper products or anything like that. So they
Yeah,
do.
man, you haven't worked until you spent a summer planting trees, and mosquitoes the size of pigs. Yeah, yeah. I digress. Sorry.
So I got distracted and almost didn't catch your question. That's my ADD coming into play there.
Yeah, I was saying. So I was using that as an analogy that when a forestry company comes in, they're trying to protect their future, if you will, because they're planting trees as they're taking them down. So I was comparing that to what you're doing at Drees. Is there anything you're doing to entice or to help generate builders in the future? Like, are you working with students? Are you getting into the high schools? What are you doing? Are you funding projects in that respect to make the trades more enticing? Because it is in your best interest to get more people involved.
I've been with Drees for 10 months, and I there may be something Drees is doing that I just haven't been privy to yet. I do know that Drees is part of LBA, Leading Builders of America, and they have the Building Talent Foundation arm. So that is something that is certainly out there working on that. Drees is pretty involved with a number of things locally, and there's probably something out there that I've just not even privy to yet, but I'm sure we're involved in something from that
Uh,
standpoint. But I think there's still, regardless of what we may or may not be doing, what I know that other builders have done, we're kind of in a unique spot, right? Because we're a general contractor, so to speak, pretty much any builder, and we employ all these companies who really employ the tradespeople, right? So I think just even that builders are having the conversation, we are trying to get ahead of a problem that we know we could experience. Because if there's a shortage, that's going to raise the prices. And we are living that all right now, seeing that what has happened as the prices of everything has gone up, that buyer pool is shrinks. And so we don't want to see that happen. And so I think any builder in some way is investing in or partnering with the companies that we work with on a daily basis, saying how could we help with this? But I think there's some, large companies. IES comes to mind as a big mechanical company that they shared with me all their training processes that they have, and the way they're trying to bring people in and bring up electricians or any other type of skilled trades. So I think those companies too are investing heavily in this because they see the age of their workforce. I struggle with it a little bit because I see I see that need, and I think there's a great point of bringing people into trade schools and doing that. But I do also think there's some balance of, getting some type of business or call it life skills type education too, because a lot of those people likely aspire to maybe own their own business, run their own electrical company. And just because you know how to be an electrician does not mean you can run an electrical company, right? So I think it's a balance that we need to get those skilled trades in, but I don't know that we could just encourage everybody just go be an electrician. Some people be an electrician and get you know, some business school knowledge maybe as well. And because we're going to need those companies, because a lot of the principals of these companies are very late in their careers. And what happens when they just decide, you know what, I'm done running my drywall company? Who fills that gap of the person with the capital to buy the trucks and get the inventory and all those things? That's a gap that will be very interesting to see how that's filled. And that might only be filled by larger conglomerates, so that you can come in and do that.
I'm seeing more and more focus on the grade schools and bringing or introducing the whole idea of labor to them.
Mhm.
And there's something about the potential of working with a power tool once they've experienced it for the first time. It opens up a whole world of possibilities. And it seems, focusing on adults is one thing, but we got to get them when they're younger and then make that part of the curriculum. And there are a number of different associations and programs that are at play right now that are in the schools right now and take them right through that. It's part of the curriculum. So when they graduate, they actually do come out as a budding young apprentice for an electrician or drywaller, whatever the trade may be that they've picked. And the schools actually help them get employment as well. So they're coming out of high school, graduating, and then working instantly, which is like a fascinating concept. And I'm seeing more and more of that roll out across the country. That's why I was wondering if you guys were involved in that at all, or even looking at it as a solution to the predicament that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's a great reminder for me to see what Drees is doing some stuff, because I'm sure there's some things out there, but kind of the new kid to the party, and maybe just not privy to it yet. But
They
yeah,
haven't given you the keys to that door yet.
yeah.
I get it. Okay.
But I've got two boys that are in high school. They're 17 and 15, junior and freshman in high school right now, and it's just watching the educational experience. There has been never a point in their education where it's been focused on a trade. I mean, it is college preparatory, a college path all the way. And I even just shake my head at myself sometimes going, here I am, I'm in construction and I haven't even pushed that on them at all. We talk about it, and I talk about how much money they can make doing X versus whatever that might be through a college education, and who knows what path they might take. But yeah, there's certainly, I think, there's a there's a gap in a lot of our educational systems out there. Probably well-meaning, well-intended. It seems like a lot of those things are. Maybe they're well-meaning and well-intended, but they're not. They're potentially putting some people on a path that's not going to be a successful path for them, because it's maybe just not something they're interested in. Like you said, they may just want to work with their hands, but they're being told that they need to work on a keyboard.
Or they don't even know that the option's there. But to the point about the keyboard, there's an old expression, you have to meet them where they're at. And I get excited about when I see things like 3D printed homes and that it's all being done with an iPad, which is a technology that kids already know. So part of it is introducing them to things, as I said earlier, they don't even know existed.
Yeah.
And to light them up about what the potential is or what the future can be as a different career path. And I think, unfortunately, there's a generation that has been sold a bill of goods that the only reason you go into the trades is because you can't do anything else. The only path forward to success is you need to go to university. And then I see a whole frustrated generation that are coming out with degrees. And I'm not trying to bash universities per se. If you have a career path, so you want to be a doctor, lawyer, a dentist, but there's a definite path at the end of that rainbow, then absolutely that's the way you have to go. You have to go to university to get that education. But if you're there because you don't know what else to do, and you spent 4 years, 5 years partying, and some of them have, floaty rivers, and these universities are more of a country club than they are a place of higher learning, you graduate in debt with no future living in your parents' basement. That's why I keep defaulting to this. We've sold them a bill of goods, whereas there's a whole different side of the equation that they don't even know exists.
Yeah, I mean, you just gave me a business idea. If 10, you know, up soon to be college freshmen just want to pay me $50,000 to $70,000 a year to hang out with me, and I'll help them figure out what they want to do in life. That's not a bad business model. Because you're right, that's kind of what it is. You're just spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out what you want to be in life, and that's eh, it is a
I
it's a
just got
tricky
such a
thing.
negative taste because I've read a number of these studies where the universities have focused on the student experience, whatever the hell that is. Like for me, the experience was my mother would give me a shot in the head if I came home with anything less than a B. That was the experience, right? And the focus has been on, as I said, maybe you thought I was joking. They're trying to create like a country club environment because they want you to enroll, stay there, and most of it is on student debt to be there.
Mhm.
And again, what's that trajectory or that path forward if they don't even know which direction they're going? And it seems to me the game has been stacked against them in that respect. It's all about extracting more money from them, keeping them in debt. And then again, we get a generation that is lost. And that to me is a real tragedy I see.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
I'll get off my soapbox. Yeah.
hey, your soapbox is valid in multiple ways because, like you said, we've got a potential labor issue, which is maybe it's the result of educational systems that could drive a labor issue to us. You've got a lot of people with a lot of college debt, so they're coming out with more debt than they can afford based on the jobs that they have. So what does that make them do? Maybe they're delaying their time of getting married. I think the stats are showing us that people are getting married later. They don't have as much money. They're having less children. They're delaying their home ownership. So we're getting back to, okay, how is this really affecting me? Well, yeah, it is. People aren't buying homes, their first home until I think the latest data was like 39 years old. What they can afford. So it's all interconnected. And, it certainly drives the issues that us as builders have to be aware of because all those things equate to can people buy housing? Can they afford housing? And we got to think about those.
Let's do this. Randy, you've got unlimited resources. You're literally the king of building sitting on a throne. No limitations whatsoever, no government restraints. What would be things that you would implement right now to help clean up the state of the union in terms of what's happening in building right now? To expedite getting more homes built faster, cheaper.
There's so many layers to it. I've had similar conversations with people before. I'll just default back to something recently that I was thinking about. In a lot of our interactions with cities, municipalities, counties, whatever it is, to try to get more housing approved, there seems to be a real big issue with infrastructure, whether that be sewer capacity, water capacity, school capacity, could be roads, traffic's always something that is complained about. And I get the struggle that these municipalities kind of go like, how are we going to pay for this? And most of it just falls back to the developer to say, all right, I'm going to do this for the water capacity or sewer capacity, or we'll build the roads, or we'll contribute fees that go to schools or whatever it is. So, I mean, if there was, we spend money on infrastructure all the time, but I think we could spend some money on infrastructure potentially to these areas, which people do want to live in, that are the growth areas, and say, hey, this is an area that has the ability to put housing in the ground if it had more sewer, if it had more water. Maybe we dedicate some resources that way because God knows we're spending money on a bunch of silly stuff anyway. And I feel like it would actually impact what people can pay for homes because there is tens, thousands of dollars, tens thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the state and the local municipality, that are in other stuff. It's not in the sticks and bricks and the land that's underneath you when you buy your home. It's in the infrastructure that was had to put into place, the fees or the permits that were paid for, the impact fees that you're paying for in your 30-year mortgage don't directly benefit your home. And if you could take some of that out, it would bring the cost of the land down, which would therefore bring the cost of the homes down.
You just said impact fee, and I think I nearly threw up in my mouth. I was just on an interview a couple hours ago with Chris Lyons. He's the president of the Texas Association of Home Builders,
So,
and he's a builder in Amarillo. And he was talking about impact fees. And it just seemed like such an oxymoron that the municipalities are putting impact fees, right? Well, what's the impact? The impact is you're charging me more to build a home as a builder, which means I've got to put that cost into cost of the home,
mhm.
which means the buyer now has to pay this additional cost. There's an impact. So now we're making it even more or less affordable for a home. Like, how much more of an impact do you want, you imbeciles? And it's something that Jim Tobin, the president of National Associated Home Builders, said, government's coming for you. Like it or not, government's coming for you. And it seems like they're going out of their way to make it more and more difficult or putting more hurdles in the way of builders to do what they want to do, which is build.
It certainly feels that way a lot of times. There are like anything within politics, I think there's there's a mixed bag of individuals in that realm and who they're um, answering to constituent wise can vary. I can respect some of their points where they just simply go, "What how can the residents pay for this?" But then there's also just the not in my backyard. We're just anti-growth to be anti-growth. We're going to just make this impossible for you to build something that's not $1 million. And who's that benefiting? It's just benefiting the people that live there. So it's saying we don't want that type of housing. It's like these are going to be really nice homes. What do you mean that type of housing? So there's certainly that part that exists, and then there's a part which there is reality of saying we can't pay for this. If you can pay for it, you can do it, and then we simply have to just go. The market won't bear that type of cost. Then, unfortunately, the city's kind of sitting with a problem that probably existed before we came, whether that's a
Yeah.
traffic problem or a water capacity, sewer capacity, or school overcrowding process. That a problem that maybe a developer could help if we could, you know, split the cost. And so I think and different states have different mechanisms for that and different tax things that they can put into place. Tennessee just kind of put some things into place that can help with that. I haven't really seen that activated yet, but Texas is a place, Florida is a place that have special taxing districts that help them put more master plan communities in place, which helps with the housing supply. And I think other states could probably look at some of that and maybe help with some of their housing shortages and their infrastructure issues.
I'm going to do a lane change here, Randy. I call this rapid fire.
All
So
right.
I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. Don't overthink it. First thing that comes into your head, finish the sentence.
That could be
Ready?
dangerous.
Yeah, it could be. That's what I'm hoping for. Okay, here we go. Builders get into trouble when they
Don't know their cost.
fastest way to lose money as a builder is
Do a bad land deal.
a deal is already dead when
You're in love with it.
builders avoid blank and then it costs them.
Builders avoid blank and it costs them. Well, that's a tricky one. Builders avoid systems and it costs them money.
Good one. If you don't get this right away, nothing else matters.
Your customer service.
Okay, let's go more of a personal lane change here. When I finally get that rare hour to myself, what do I do to recharge the batteries?
Spend time with my family.
Nice. One place that always helps me reset, reflect, and think clearly is
Mowing my grass.
get out of Dodge, really?
I like mowing the grass.
What do you got, like 10 acres or something? Get a
No,
horse or a goat.
it's only an hour. It's done quickly.
Get a goat. All right, a book, a movie, or a quote that stayed with me longer than expected is
Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
good one. Okay. Something really funny that people discover about me once they get to know me.
I love conspiracy theories.
All right, we got a lot in common there. Last one. What a thoughtful gift. As I unwrapped the package, to my delight, I found
The Bible.
wow, got me on that one for good. We covered a lot of ground here, young man. Anything that we missed that you want to touch on?
I would just say to anybody who's, young in their careers, trying to find their way, just put in the hard work, put in the effort, raise your hand and say, I want to do more. And as you put in the effort, put in the time, the opportunities will find you. Where hard work and luck meet is a great opportunity.
You're a testament to that, man. You started off selling sporting gear, then sales, and then look at where you are now. So yeah, you're perfect proof of the fact that if you work hard, you're going to make it.
My high school newspaper said I was the most likely to sell shoes after high school.
I thought you were most likely not to have shoes after high school. My friend, thanks for taking time out today, and I'll end it with to be continued.
All right. Great to talk to you, Michael.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.